Action.
Hello, and welcome to the Grudge Report featuring the Expanse, a production of the SETI Institute. My name is Margaret, Reeb, and I'm joined by Franck Marchis. He's a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and also chief science officer at Unistellar. So he's got a pretty cool gig, if you ask me. Thank you so much for tuning in today. As always, we are going to be talking about The Expanse, and today we're going to be talking about Season 4, Episode 4, called Retrograde. So if you haven't gotten caught up on The Expanse, please do so and then come back here because we are going to spoil everything up into this episode. Again, that's Season 4, Episode 4, Retrograde. And we know that Season 4 has been out for a while, and Season 5 actually recently aired, but we're doing a rewatch. So we're trying to not spoil anything we know is going to happen and just take each episode as it comes. We're going to talk a lot about the science, but to be honest, there wasn't too much science in this episode, was there, Franck?
No, too much science, but we always say that, and then at the end we talk for like 30 minutes.
Then we find something to talk about.
We always find something to talk about, right?
Yes. I have to say, I did start reading the first book. I bought it, and I have it in the series, so I'm very, very excited, and I had to share.
You're reading books, paper books?
Paper books. I look at so many screens that it's kind of nice to not look at a screen at the end of the day, but that's a personal preference. I love e-readers. So let's talk about this episode because, like I said, there wasn't that much science, but there was a lot of drama. So let's talk about Mars first, just do a really quick recap. We're following Bobby, and we're getting a pretty good look at how the Martian economy is collapsing because of these new worlds that were opened up because of the ring gates. And Bobby is a veteran. She's a very stand-up person, or she tries to be, and she, by the end of the episode, gets caught up in a criminal enterprise. This was the criminal enterprise that she tried to save her nephew from, and she sort of realizes that there's nothing much to do on Mars except be a criminal. So it was a very interesting character episode for Bobby. Anything to add there, Franck, on Mars?
She basically in the middle of a society which is collapsing because the economy was based on war. And as soon the war is over, all these veterans come back, and there is an excess of people, and there is no more economy. So it's a collapse of an economy which has been artificially sustained for a cause which was already a lost case in my mind. So that's what happened. It did happen in the history of humanity. And this is happening on Mars.
Yes. And I think people, like we've talked about before, are realizing that it's easier to go find worlds that already have atmospheres versus creating your own as well. So it's sad, but Bobby seems to be making the best of it as much as she can. And then we get a very little bit of, I guess, Earth. I think that's where Avasarala is. She's not on the moon. And of course, she's facing an opponent in her elected position for the first time in her career, or at least the first time somebody who may beat her has arisen. And we have a really good character moment where she's yelling a message to Holden to try and figure out what's going on Illis. And then she immediately has to pull it together to go do a TV interview. So I love Avasarala. She, of course, is the one of the big forces that is nervous about the proto-molecule and the worlds on the other side of the ring. So no science there, but a great moment if you're an Avasarala fan.
A moment that reminds a little bit some of our moments in our life, right?
She knows what she wants. She wants what she wants, and she's in a position of power. So I love Avasarala, and she, of course, her outfits are always amazing, and she did not disappoint. But let's get to, who I'm going to talk about. I want to talk about because she's one of my absolute favorite characters, Kamina Drummer and Ashford in the belt, and they're, of course, in our solar system, and they have caught a very integral character. And who is that, Franck?
It's Marco Inaros.
I think this is the first time we see Marco on screen. Is that right?
I was thinking about that. I think that's the first time. Yeah, we finally.
Yeah, I think we might have seen him in a video of some kind. He has a video message, or they're like they think that they caught him on camera somewhere. But this is the first time that, as a character, he's there
and we interact with him. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not disappointed.
We're not disappointed. But where did they find him? There was an interesting conversation.
Yes, so that's a kind of interesting science moment, because they mentioned they found him on Metis, and then there is this conversation. Ash will say, "Well, what was he doing on Metis in the inner part of the Jupiter asteroids, the Jupiter moons?" And the person correct him, say, "No, it's not Metis. The moon is 9 Metis." So, and that's a true fact. There is the same name for 2 bodies in our solar system. We have an asteroid 9 Metis, which is in the main belt, and we do have as well a moon of Jupiter, Jupiter 16, if I remember, which is called Metis, and that's a problem. Most of the time when you write codes, and I did in the past write codes where I was looking for Metis in the database, and it was a nightmare because I have 2 Metis and my code crashed, for instance. So this happened. We kind of running out of names. And
I was going to say, aren't you on some sort of council that names things? Don't you think that there are other ways of, why is there a repetitive name?
So here we come with the critics, right? So people criticize us because we use codes, and then people criticize us because we have the same name for a body. Unfortunately, names are always limited. I mean, Metis, who is Metis? Metis is she's the wife of Zeus, right? We started naming bodies in our solar system based on the Greek and Roman mythology. And of course, after a few years, so just mention Metis, the moon, was discovered in 1969, so not that long ago. So, and Metis, the asteroid, was discovered way before that. I don't know the date exactly, but I know it's 9 Metis. So it's the 9th asteroid discovered. The first one is 1 Ceres, and it was discovered in 1801. So 9 Metis probably has been discovered a few years after that. Okay, so when they discover Metis, the moon, for some reason they decided to give the name of this moon, which is the closest moon at the time known in orbit around Jupiter. They give the name of his wife, first wife, because it was kind of logical. Jupiter, first moon in orbit around, the closest one will be his first wife. I don't know the detail of the story in 1979. I was a bit too young for that. But I'm assuming that there was no real cohesion group to name properly objects and to say, oh, let's not name this one Metis because we already have the asteroid. It's probably he went through, and now we have 2 Metis in the solar system. We have multiple cases like this. You have even an asteroid with the same name. It does happen too. So that's the reason.
There are a lot of asteroids, so I can imagine that it might get.
Yesterday, I made a presentation, and I had to look at the number of asteroids known in our solar system so far, and it's 1,078,400, something like that.
So quite a few. And how many moons does Jupiter have? Do we know about?
60-ish. And we discovered recently some new ones. So
we're always discovering new ones, right? Because it's a huge planet with a very big gravitational pull.
So Metis is super small, like it's 50-kilometer diameter. And we got picture of Metis, which is kind of blurry, but we can see the shape with the Galileo spacecraft in 1995. We get some observation. We can resolve the asteroid. You see, I confuse it.
The moon. See, it needs a different name.
Here we are.
I mean, I guess this is going to plague humanity for thousands and thousands of years, because in the world of the Expanse, they're still getting it confused.
You see, in the Expanse it happened, and I'm sure in 2,000 years they will be still confused, and they will ask, why did they name a moon of Jupiter the same way they name an asteroid? And
it reminds me a lot of when colonizers get to a new place and they want to call it New York or New Amsterdam or something instead of creating a whole new name.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you a story which is extremely European, but when Europeans travel in the US, they make fun of names, because you often have names which are kind of pioneer, new pioneer, or it's always we can totally see by looking at the names on the map of roads or cities that they are named by people who had just arrived, and they say, oh, we're gonna call this the French River. There was also that, or we're gonna, because I don't know, probably look like some places when they were coming
back home, right? Back where they were coming from, yeah.
Like that. So New York and French River or whatever, or the French Bassin. There is so many names like that.
So this will be our plight as humans for as long as we're around. What did you think of Marco overall?
Well, Marco is a character. It's funny because now I watched it the second time and I know what's going to happen in the next season. I realized that this was kind of the most important moment in the season, in fact, the season 4. Because he's a great speaker, obviously. There is this scene, but he's basically in a very low gravity. So he's floating, and they're watching him from above. It's kind of the trials, right? That's the way apparently the Belters do the trials. And he's floating, and he managed to stay still, and he has the hands like that, like some famous characters we know, Jesus. And he's giving his speech, and his speech is extremely biblical, definitely. He's giving himself a role here, which is a biblical role. He's gonna save the Belters, and gonna make them grow and be a great society. I mean, he has this amazing speech about the future of the Belters.
It was sermon-esque. It very much felt
exactly
in that vein. Yes, and it's interesting because even before that scene, Kamina goes to him, or Ashford, I believe, and they try and get information out of him. And Kamina makes a comment of, oh, he talks too much, where she seems to pick up on that. And this is such a pivotal scene. So if anybody is watching and has watched this episode but hasn't watched beyond it, I would go back and take another look at all of this interaction with Marco, because there's a lot of interesting stuff here.
There is something we can say about Marco, that he understood already what's going to happen. He says multiple times that the inners are lost their spirit. And it's true. We see what happened on Mars. Mars lost his spirit, basically. And that's the time for the Belters to take over, because they are the future. They are the one who basically will be able to grow and bring the rings and expand humanity. It's not going to be the Martians or the Earther. That's the way he sees it.
Yeah, and I think I'm not a space terrorist, but I think Marco's perspective that now is the time to strike and make his mark on the Belter, the Belter's mark, is correct for the reasons that you just said and that he said, is that there's this really pivotal moment in Martian and Earth perspective, and where they settle, who knows, but it's a good time to make a power grab for the belt. So we'll see what happens with him. I also appreciated seeing folks from different factions, because we always hear about how the OPA consists of loosely or affiliated in some way factions, and OPA is an umbrella term. So it was nice to see representatives from Black Sky and Golden Bow, I believe.
Yeah.
So that was also a nice touch as well in terms of world building. Anything else in the belt before
No,
we
I
leave
think for
my
the belt,
beloved
that's all.
Camino?
Yeah.
Well, let's go to Illis, where I am today. There's an absolute civil war about to break out. Actually, I don't know if you can call it a civil war because I don't think there's any government, but there's definitely skirmishes happening between Mutri, the guy who always plays villains in whatever show he's in, his crew, and the Belters who have arrived, and Naomi and Amos and Holden, who have sort of aligned themselves with the Belters, I would say. What do you make of all of this? What stuck out to you on Illis?
Well, I dislike Mutri.
I think that was the intent of this character.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody will say I like Marchis, but because I dislike him because he really, as mentioned in the show, he really thinks he's the law and he's above the law, and he can arbitrarily decide what's going to happen to people based on his convictions without having any trials or nothing like that. It's interesting the contrast between the Belters and these trials and this conversation, and Mercury on Illis, which basically kill people without even asking more questions based on suspicions.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Remember, the Earthers are supposed to be more civilized. That's the way they present themselves. But at the end, you notice that as soon they're out and they have to face a conflict, while some of them, like Mercury, will not even hesitate 5 seconds and kill a human being without any problem. So I really don't like this guy, but he's important in the show because he basically bring this contrast that I think is necessary to understand where the Belters coming from and why they will react, and why in the future they may be doing some drastic things against Earth.
I will say too, sometimes I forget because he's such a I really like this actor, but he is like the bad guy in every show that I've seen him in. I'm sure somebody will come up with one in which he's the hero, but he always plays the same sort of like intensely bad guy. But I mean, his ship did get shot down when he was landing, and sometimes I forget that because he's just so terrible. Mm-hmm. So he's I think he's using that to his advantage, but he might have a little bit more leeway because he's nervous and worried that more people are going to die. But he's bad news. There's some other interesting stuff going on Illis with Naomi. Poor Naomi. I think we've finally seen that these gravity drugs did not work for her. That was heavily hinted at and shown in the last episode where she almost had a heart attack. And now she is being pursued by Mercury and is very, very sick.
Yeah, she basically suffered from this gravity sickness. As you mentioned, we don't really see anything except she has these dark eyes. So it's kind of to show visually what's going on to her. She has a hard time to walk too. And it's probably related to the fact that her heart has an issue to pump blood everywhere in her body. It's mentioned in the past episode. And she has a hard time to basically stand on the gravity and walk. That's what I don't know. That's what we expect from someone who never faced gravity, but that's realistic. So the solution is to send her back to her ship and send her back to the low gravity, escape the whales.
But Illis is a mystery all of its own. Speaking of environments, because we see the effects of that missile that blew up one of the diggers, I think. But apparently there might be more. There are all sorts of there's seismic activity, and then a chain of 3 islands that are giving off heat. Is that right, Franck?
Yeah, so you should remind that there is a spaceship in orbit, an Earth spaceship in orbit around Illis, the scientific team. So I found the name of the guy because I could not find his name. It's Dr. Sarkis. And he's basically using instruments to observe the planet. Just mentioned, Mercury asked him to use those telescopes or sensors he has to observe the planet to be able to detect or to identify Naomi and the doctor of Belter doctor, I forgot the name, but he refused to do it. Or he used as an excuse the fact that he's going behind the planet to say bye. For 11 hours. So that's mean that the orbit is around 22 hours, by the way, just since he says that the radio silence will be 11 hours. So in the spacecraft, the spaceship, they have sensors. They probably have telescopes. I will make assumptions, and they look at the surface as well. And he mentioned that he detects something weird. That the islands we see. You remember Ilus as a gigantic continent, and then
a couple islands, right? Mm-hmm.
And some of those islands are generated heat. So how can you see that? But the way we do the measurement of heat is
not with your eyes.
Sorry?
Well, not with your eyes.
You could.
Right?
You could.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you do it with a giant thermometer?
So what you do, you basically look, if something is hot, it will glow. So there is a relationship between the temperature of an object and its, here start the lecture. So Margaret, get ready. There's a relationship between the temperature of an object and the light that this object is emitted. It's called the black body curve. Something you may have seen before. So depending on the temperature, the body will emit light spontaneously at a very specific wavelength. So there is a very simple equation to know that, which is 3000 divided by the temperature in Kelvin. That gives you basically where most of the light will come from.
The wavelength?
Sorry?
The wavelength?
The wavelength, yes. Mm-hmm. So if you a human being has a temperature of 300 Kelvin, so basically 300,000 divided by 300 Kelvin, that gives you 10 micron. So you emit light at 10 micron. 10 micron is the mid-infrared. Okay, you don't see 10 micron with your human eye.
That's why you need infrared goggles.
That's why you need infrared goggles to see heat.
And so like humans, people use that when they're searching for people, right? Infrared.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the lava.
Lava.
Yeah, terrestrial.
Human lava? No.
Terrestrial lava. So lava has a temperature typically of 1200 degrees Celsius, which is 2000 Fahrenheit. That's the only time I will say the word Fahrenheit in this discussion. Don't even try. That's basically give us an emission at 2 micron. So 2 micron, it's still infrared, okay? Because remember, visible is 0.3 to 2.7, typically. So if you want to be able to see something glowing in the visible light, let's say red, it needs to have a temperature of 4000 Kelvin to be visible. Okay, to glow, to be like center.
So that's pretty hot.
The sun has this guy. Sun is 5000 Kelvin. So that's the reason you see the sun invisible, because the surface of the sun has a temperature of 5000 Kelvin. So it's emitted mostly light at the center of the visible wavelength. And
so everything emits light. It just isn't all visible.
Exactly. Any object on any temperature will emit light. All right? And it's kind of cool that it's not cool. It's not a coincidence, but our eye has adapted to the color of the sun. Right? And is adapted to the maximum wavelength of the black body curve, which is the sun. So that's logical. So let's go back to the show. So it's mentioning that it's detecting an activity heat source on this island, and we see a diagram for a few seconds where we see the island and the red spot on it. So this is not probably visible. This is infrared observations of those islands, and what you can see is an excess of heat coming from temperature probably of 1000 Kelvin or 2000 Kelvin.
So like lava.
Like lava. So why I pay attention to these last 15 seconds, not even of the show, is because I did my PhD on the study of Io satellite.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, lots of lava.
And a lot of lava. And we observe volcanic activity of Io using infrared instrument and adaptive optics. So what we were doing is exactly what it's doing, but from Earth, looking at Io far away, an orbit around Jupiter with 8-meter class telescope or 4-meter at the time. And what you could see in this case, I will put a picture. I will go back to my old thesis.
Put it up.
Yeah. Look, do I have it here? No, I don't have it. I don't have my thesis. I have my.
Why don't you have that like leather bound somewhere? That's what I would do.
Oh, I didn't. I have so many of them. I don't read my thesis. I read other theses. Ah, no, it's here. Look.
There you go.
And inside.
How many pages is that, Franck?
No idea. Way too many. That was in in 2000. So at the time, it's not very nice. I wanted to show you a nice picture, but we're probably gonna cut this because it's way too long. But
let me see.
This is one of the famous pictures I have in my thesis.
Is that a picture of Io?
Yeah, and that's infrared observation of Io from the ground using a 4-meter class telescope.
Wow, that's
and
insane.
we can see the lava, the hot lava on the surface of Io.
Now, is that picture does it include the entire moon, or is that a part of the moon where the lava is?
The entire moon, yeah.
So you can see big swaths of it, lava.
Yeah, we see like I don't know. At this time we have 7 volcanoes per hemisphere.
And most of that is tidal, right? It's from the gravitational forces of Jupiter.
It's from the combination of the gravitational forces of Jupiter with the eccentricity of Europa, and the fact that the Io is in resonance.
That it's getting pulled.
Yes. So basically, Io is being pulled by is orbiting once when Europa do 2 turns. And Europa is slightly eccentric, and the other moon, the third one as well. So Io is being kind of squeezed regularly by the gravitational pull of Jupiter, and that's what produces volcanic activity.
Right.
I don't know if that's the case on Eros, but I just wanted to say that when I saw this moment where he looks and you see the lava, the heat in the infrared, it make me think about the research I used to do for my thesis in 2000.
Could a moon be big enough to have that sort of effect on a planet? That sort of gravitational tidal pull?
The story of binary planets has been discussed, in fact.
So you would need to have 2 planets, probably, right? Like a moon wouldn't be big enough. Yeah. Mm.
Well, at least I don't have the calculation of this, and it will depend as well on the distance between the planet and the moon. But if the system is 1/3, for instance, the moon is 1/3 of the size of the planet, then you can expect to have some significant tides of the moon on the planet as well. Right. It's the case for us. Our moon is making tides, but it's on water. The tides are essentially on the water. We see them because of the fact that the ocean are affected by the presence of the moon. Not the entire planet, because the gravitational pull is not strong enough to basically deform the planet itself, the ground, the Earth.
So it just plays around with some water. Interesting. So, yeah. Well, I don't know. So I have a feeling that this is not natural. I'll say that.
It's not natural.
this lava or whatever is happening, but you get the sense that something was triggered, and I mean, they really leave us on a cliffhanger for the next one.
So let's see what happens next episode.
Let's see. Anything else, Franck, on this episode?
That's all for me.
It's all for me too. Well, thank you, Franck, as always, for teaching me many, many things. And thank you to anyone who tuned in. We very much appreciate it. We love talking about the Expanse, especially the science part of the Expanse. And as I said at the beginning, we are a product of the SETI Institute, and the SETI Institute is a research nonprofit whose mission is to understand the nature and origin of life in the universe. So we're looking for illnesses of our own and any life that may be on it. And if you're interested in this mission or want to support it, there are plenty of links below. You can also just get notified whenever a new Grudge report goes live, which would be awesome as well. And yes, click the mini buttons below, leave us comments. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
What is that?
Choo, choo, choo.
Oh, obviously.
Another one.